And without even taking a breath, the very next words that came out of that doctor's mouth as he looked at me were this: "But you do know you can have an abortion."
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonen, faith columnist and features writer for the Forum, author and speaker. In today's episode, we're going to consider the phrase, "Abortion is healthcare." This phrase has been touted from near and far in recent years. To be totally transparent, both Jody, my guest, and I fervently disagree, but it's still worth asking the question. It's worth pausing and truly considering it. Is abortion healthcare, really? The ramifications of the answer are huge, affecting everything from government funding, and even what we consider is at the heart of this controversial issue. But before we can answer that question, we must ask another. What is abortion? And it seems the best person to answer would be someone who has gone through it. My friend Jody Clemens has. In fact, it was through hearing her story over a decade ago now that I was drawn to pro-life sidewalk ministry. Until then, abortion was more of a concept to me. Though I did experience losing a child through miscarriage in 1999, I could not have conceived the actual lived experience of choosing to end the life of one's child. Jody isn't the only post-abortive woman I've heard from through the years, but the stories are consistent in the heartbreak revealed. If we're going to have an honest discussion about this divisive topic, we need to hear from the women whose lives have been turned upside down by an unplanned pregnancy. Jody's story will haunt you, and I hope give you a new perspective on the topic of abortion. Now, let's hear it from her heart. Welcome, Jody. It's so nice to have you here, my friend.
Amen.
Yes.
And thank you, Roxanne, for inviting me to be with you today to discuss this very controversial, yet a topic that definitely needs to be had.
Yeah, well, I'm really grateful for you opening your soul today because I know it's not easy. I know it's a tender and a personal experience as well. And I know from having heard you and others talk about their abortion experience that every time you do talk about it, it really is demands a lot. It can be exhausting. And so I really appreciate the sacrifice of you being willing to pour out your heart today on this topic. And as I mentioned earlier, the topic before us is abortion really healthcare? Because as you know, many today are claiming that it is, and many decisions hinge on the answer to this question. But before we answer that question, we really need to pause and ask, what is abortion? So let's get to the heart of it by examining the circumstances that led to you choosing this for yourself. And I was thinking, since this is matters of soul importance, that it might be a good starting point to talk a little bit about your faith background, so we kind of get a sense of where you were at in your soul at the time this decision had to be made. So maybe start there.
Start there. Okay. Well, first of all, I do want to say that it is an honor to share and my abortion journey, my journey from pain to peace, from grief to grace, and fear to freedom in Christ. So my story starts, I actually was raised in a home where faith was practiced and emphasized. I was baptized. I was confirmed. I could recite many scriptures I had memorized. I knew all the necessary church teachings, such as the 10 Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, the Apostles' Creed. And Roxanne, you could find me regularly engaging in a lot of church activity. But the truth be known, that is all that I was doing. Even though I was in church once or twice a week and did what my church required of me, I had a lot of head knowledge about God, but I did not personally know God. I did not personally embrace God. I was not a Christ follower. So because of that, like many in my age group, I started chasing after earthly pleasures to fulfill my fleshly desires. I pretty much did what I wanted, when I wanted, with who I wanted, and whenever I wanted. So yes, church had been an important part of my life, but I did not embrace it.
Where were you at the point then when you were faced with this decision? You're kind of describing that your life was not God-centered and it was, you found yourself in a situation of an unplanned pregnancy. Tell us a little bit about that and what you were going through when you learned about that pregnancy. And how old were you also? Curious.
Okay. Well, I was 23 years old. I had just completed college and I was pursuing my career when I made this decision that changed the course of my life. I already mentioned that I was raised in a home where faith was practiced and emphasized. And yet, at the time of my decision for my abortion, Roxanne, I'm looking back right now and thinking, I had finished college and I had worked hard to get that college degree. And I was at a time in my life when I was teaching school and pursuing a career that I had longed for a long time. One day when I was teaching school, I started feeling sick. So I made an appointment to visit a doctor. And this is how I learned that I was pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant at the time, even though I was living a lifestyle that was not pleasing. I had not seriously considered the consequences of the choices that I was making in my life. Never once did I consider that. I was just doing what I wanted. But I was teaching school, and like I said, I started feeling sick, so I went to a doctor. And when I visited him, he hospitalized me overnight, which scared me, and it made me feel as though, why isn't he telling me? I'm sitting in his office, so I started thinking in my mind and my head and my heart, something is seriously wrong with me. I have a medical condition here that's really bad, and he wanted to run further tests. So I went to the hospital, and the very next morning, early the next morning, that same doctor came into my room. He leaned over my bed. He looked directly in my eyes and said to me, "Well, young lady, the reason you are so sick is because you are pregnant." And without even taking a breath, the very next words that came out of that doctor's mouth as he looked at me were this: "But you do know you can have an abortion." I can tell you at that moment, hearing those words, I'm pregnant, you can have an abortion. That sexual freedom message that I had once embraced was quickly replaced with fear. My test was positive. I knew I was having a baby. And like many women in unplanned pregnancy, this was absolutely not a part of my life plan. You know, most women who are in a relationship with a husband and a wife, and they learn this excitement that they're having a baby, there is joy, there is excitement. They're on the phone telling people we're having a baby. That is not true for many women like me who find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy. And I can tell you, laying in that bed, and I remember this so clearly, the thought that was running through my mind was this: no joy, no excitement, fear, but my thought was this: I have a problem that needs to be fixed. This is a problem and I need to fix it. Well, because of the fear that I felt at that time, Roxanne, and the confusion that I was feeling, I think I did what many people, probably even you, Roxanne, do when you're looking for guidance or advice about situations in your life that have never happened to you before. You don't know what to do. So what I personally did, I chose to talk to people I trusted in my past. I knew they loved me. I believed they would help me, and they would give me the best advice because they would have my best interest at heart. I'm not a woman who kept a pregnancy a secret like many, many, many women do and just run off to an abortion clinic. I gave this thought. I considered this. So I did talk to those people. But unfortunately, all the people I talked to agreed with the doctor. They all recommended abortion.
I have a question. As you're talking about that doctor, that really stands out to me. I guess, why would he suggest that?
I've thought of that often, Roxanne. Who does that? You know, doctors take an oath to preserve life, right? Once a woman becomes pregnant, he has two patients. This baby within me was alive. It was human. It had a heartbeat probably. He had taken an oath to preserve life. What he was telling me to do was intentionally taking the life of another human being. Now, I didn't hear those words. I just heard the word abortion. But obviously, as a physician,
right, and you're in a vulnerable position because you'd been feeling sick. You were still a young adult trying to, start your career. And you're looking, at that age, you're not wise. Like your brain hasn't even formed altogether. So you're really trusting people in your life who have more experience, whose care you're under. That just is why it's shocking to me that was, and then just the closeness and how you remember him. I guess it was a him, right?
It was a him.
Yeah. And just being so close and
and
just kind of like planting that little idea, like, here's the starting point. Here's where this is a good idea for where we're going to go next. And it leaves you trusting him because you're alone. You're alone.
Well, he's also, in my mind and in my thought process at that time, a person of authority. There's people that we look at that are doctors or nurses or clergy. That we have in our mind, these people know what they're talking about. They're experts in their field. They're authority figure in my life. And yes, Roxanne, women who are in a non-planned, unexpected pregnancy are in a very vulnerable decisions. We're not making decisions based on right or wrong. We're making decisions based on what other people tell us, oftentimes because of the position that we're in. So that's very true. And that's where I was at in that battle. Even when I talked to the people, the first person I called was the father of the baby. And he wasn't with me in the hospital. He was working somewhere else, and I called him and I told him what the doctor said. And he said, I agree with the doctor. So, from my personal perspective at that time, I want you to know, and this listening audience to know, that I honestly did not know much about abortion, as I don't think most people do. We hear the left and even a lot of people taunting that abortion is good health care. I did not know a lot about abortion. It wasn't a topic that was discussed in my church, even though I went to church on a regular basis. And it isn't discussed in a lot of churches. And that's, I don't want to make that as an indictment upon the church. I really, really don't. But this is a topic that needs to be discussed. It's a hard issue, but it needs to be discussed because with the statistics of 1 in 4 women having an abortion by the age of 45, no one is exempt. We are everywhere. Women who've had abortions are in every crowd, in every area, and everywhere we go. We're there. We're wives, we're mothers, we're granddaughters, we're grandmothers, we're your classmate, we're your best friend, we're that woman you have coffee with every day. We're that woman ahead of you in the grocery line. We're that woman sitting next to you in the pew of the church. I could go on and on. 1 in 4 women. And this is a topic that needs to be discussed. But when you're like a person, again, like you said, we are in a vulnerable position. And we're not making wise choices, really. That's why I went to other people.
Right, because you already explained that you were not making wise choices leading up to that. So, and I think to make that decision, like to be faced with that in a situation where you don't feel support, the stronghold for that to make that choice for life, that would have had to been something that was already cultivated in you. It would have helped. But had that been cultivated, had you been strongly pro-life, you still would have struggled. You still would have needed supportive people in your life because, again, not having the boyfriend support. You're listening. You're waiting for these voices of truth to come out, and they didn't. They
don't. And it's the voices of other people too that you trust, that you may go to. We hear things like the baby will be a burden, it'll be a hardship. People that are, in a way, it's kind of perverted compassion. They think they're trying to rescue you from something. It's like, you will lose your freedom. You may even possibly lose your job. Roxanne, you and I have been outside abortion clinics, and we have seen parents dragging their children in there, or young people into that abortion clinic. And in some way, and it's not, they feel it's compassion. Trust me. I know the people I talked to thought they were trying to help me. But what they told me was things like what I'm saying. It's like, this is going to be a hardship. You just earned your degree. You don't want to lose your job. Single parenting is hard, Jody. I was told I would get over it. And you know what else I was told? That I could return to my teaching career and I could have a real life with a real future. Now, isn't that exactly what I wanted? This problem to be gone, this problem to be fixed, and my life to return to normal.
You know what I see too, Jody, as you're talking? What's missing is you're isolated. Like, nobody is saying, we're here, we're going to be there for you. Of course you don't have to do this. Like, I feel like our society has gotten so individualistic. And the other part is you had this plan. This was the plan. You did this step, you did this step, you did this step. And there were sacrifices to get there. And to have a different plan come under the horizon, that's hard to it was hard for you to shift. It was hard for everyone else to shift. But then what? I mean, tell me about when you did make that decision and what that was like.
I want to just, I think I just need a minute to say this to Roxanne. So, because it's what we were previously talking about, the people that I went to, the people that women in an unplanned pregnancy may go to, because it's important. I do not blame those individuals that I went to for the many, as you mentioned, the many unhealthy life choices that I made that led up to the pregnancy. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm the one that made those choices. That's where I was already living an unhealthy lifestyle. And I know, as a woman who's had an abortion and have worked with many women who've had an abortion, that unless we accept our culpability and take full responsibility that led up to the pregnancy, because the pregnancy ultimately led up to the abortion. So we have to be careful, because if we always blame shift and say, well, you told me, you made me. Now, I got bad advice. I will say that. And I will say that their opinion strongly influenced my decision to have an abortion. So you're right. We're not making decisions based on what is right or wrong. Not even my core value system. Do you understand? I mean, people at that point, we might have a core value system that says, I would never do that, until you find yourself in that spot. And you will see how strong that is, But when I told other people that I was pregnant, and this is important, Roxanne, I want you to know, and the listening audience know, that what I was saying to them and what they were hearing were two different things. What I said to them was this: I'm pregnant. I'm having a baby. Which are the words that normally come out of a woman's mouth when she's talking to someone that she's looking to for advice or wanting them to know about the situation. The father, the baby, it could be the parents, it could be the friends, it could be whoever. But you know what women are really saying to them? What are you going to do with me? So I know what to do with this. This meaning the baby. We are crying out for help. Will someone please help me? Am I going to get any tangible help here? Will you support me? Or am I on my own? And when you learn you're on your own, when the father of the baby says, you're going to have an abortion, I'm not having any part of this, or the people that you trust in your life give you, it sounds like, positive reasons why you should have an abortion. This is good health care. You can go on, you can have a real life with a real future. That isn't what we're asking them. That is one of the beauties, and I'm going to go off track here a little bit, but that's one of the beauty of our pregnancy resource centers and clinics in our state. We go there, I say to them, I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby. Know what they do? We're here to help you. I'm going to give you tangible help. They will give you an ultrasound. 9 out of 10 women who see an ultrasound never have an abortion. When I walked into that abortion clinic, I never got to see my ultrasound. They turn the screens on us. They don't want us to see that baby in our womb, because instinctively women love their children. It's so abnormal to have an abortion. So you asked me the question, why did I choose abortion? By the time that I entered the doors of the abortion clinic, and I believe this is true, I can't see every woman, but many women that I've talked to, there are truly many, many battles that we have to face and conquer before we actually walk in the door of that abortion clinics. I'll speak for myself. My mother's heart was created to nurture love, and protect my child. It now was calloused. Instead of feeling the natural affection that God created us to have for our children, love, nurture, care, my heart became a heart of stone. And women do that to protect ourselves. It's like, I'm not going there. I'm not going to think that way. This is what I'm going to do. You have to shut down emotionally. That is not good health care in order to walk into an abortion clinic. I also, at that point, did not want to disappoint all those people that I had confided in. I wanted to please them. And in some strange way, I felt like I needed to keep them at my side. It's like I was a people pleaser in a sense. So I felt obligated to follow through with this abortion. And then there's one other battle that I fought, and I know many women do. It's a battle in our mind. It's up in our mind. And we'll hear things like this, or even told things like this. No one will ever have to know. You know you aren't ready to be a mother. It's not a baby yet. It's legal. It's got to be okay. You seriously don't want to lose your career. Thought after thought after thought, as a father of lies, bombarded my mind and my thought process, convincing me that abortion was good health care and right for women. So by the time I entered the doors of the abortion facility, I had now successfully convinced myself that abortion was no different than any other medical procedure that I'd ever undergone. I'm going to go to the clinic. I'm going to have an abortion. I didn't even say the word abortion, quite honestly. I would say, I'm going to go to the clinic. I'm going to undergo the necessary medical procedure. That's how I would talk to myself. And then my problem will be fixed. It's just like when I went to the hospital to get my tonsils out. I'm going to go to the clinic. I'm going to have a medical procedure. The problem will be fixed. That is where many women have to go to walk through the doors of that abortion clinic.
So my question is, were you alone in walking through those doors? Because that's something I wrote about recently. I write a column for Sidewalk Stories for our diocesan magazine. And I had heard a video of someone sharing her abortion experience. And that was one of the things she shared about how she was alone, how you don't get to bring anyone in there with you. You are on your own. And so far, I mean, even though you had other people that you were tapping into, it's just you trying to figure this out, really. And even though you had support.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say, first of all, that I'm a woman who vividly remembers everything about this day. There's some women who remember nothing because this is such a deep, dark secret. The trauma that they experience in it is buried deep in the soul. But I remember everything about that day. Actually, the father of the baby made the appointment. He paid for the abortion. He came with me to the abortion. He walked me in the doors of the abortion facility, and he sat with me on the bench until my name was called. Now, in saying that, I know that many women walk in there alone. I've seen it. I witnessed it. But even if the father of the baby or anyone else is in there with you, a parent, a friend, or whoever, they don't get past that first bench, or they're sent to a separate waiting room. You are the one that goes through every room, every discussion until you're laying on that table. You, in a sense, you are alone. Many times abortion facilities will not allow the father past the front door. Those doors are locked. You ring a doorbell. They come and let you in, and the father cannot come in. Then there's others, like I said, they can go in, but they're not with you, you know. So I vividly remember sitting there alone as I went through the procedure of going from room to room to room to room to room, you know. I also vividly recall this from my own personal story, is that once inside the abortion facility, it's a real transition for most women at that point, because now you're in the doors. my emotions started to shift. And this was such a crossroads for me. More thoughts and more questions as I'm sitting there started stirring inside of me. I was afraid, scared, if you will, about what lie ahead. I did not know because I'd never been given information about what's about to come. And then I started looking at all the other women sitting on the chairs or the benches in the same waiting room. And I recall this so vividly that in my mind I thought, I just want to be invisible. Don't see me and I won't see you. Which, looking back now, I now know shame was already setting in and I wanted to leave. But in some strange reason, for some strange reason, I felt, as many women feel, that I needed permission to leave. As if you're sitting there, it's like you just want someone to say, come on, let's get out of here. You don't have to do this. Even if the father, the baby's with you, the parents, whoever, there is a point where all your emotions start to shift because the reality of what you're doing now becomes very clear. I'm inside the doors. Getting through the doors is one thing. Sitting inside there. And when you're sitting inside there with those other women, you can hear things. You know what's going on in this place. But for me, permission was not granted, as it isn't for most women. It's very seldom, and you and I know this, Roxanne, that once someone is inside the doors of an abortion clinic, it's very, very hard for them to come out of there. You know, and as I mentioned earlier, the father of the baby was with me. He had made the appointment. He had paid for it. He had driven me there. He'd walked down the sidewalk with me. And at that point, I felt this strange, twisted feeling that now I needed to do my part. And my part was to do something that every woman that walks in there does. And that was to get on the abortion table.
He'd paid for it. He was supporting you. My question, you were saying a little bit ago that you weren't calling it an abortion, but were you aware that it was your child?
Instinctively, I knew that. That's why all the battles. That's why I needed to shut down my heart. That is why all these thoughts. I mean, I was doing everything physically, emotionally, every way I could to shut down my feelings, my emotions, my fears, everything. Absolutely. Absolutely. I knew that it was a baby.
Did the father ever talk about it as if it were a child?
Mm-mm.
The reality?
No, we didn't talk much, Roxanne. I mean, okay. When I called him and I said that, you know, I'm in the hospital, I just learned I'm pregnant. The doctor told me this, and he just said, I think he's right. And he just took it from there and went with it, you know, set the appointment. And I just remember him picking me up, and we were driving to the...
He was saying a lot with what he wasn't saying, because I wonder what was going through him. But I would think for you, that's rejection. That's rejection. In that he isn't acknowledging.
It's not what women want to hear. There's no woman that delights in having an abortion. None. You know, I mean, I've heard of women who've had 2, 3, 4. I knew a woman who said 7 abortions. You know, but whether it's 1 or 7, I mean, you go through the trauma, you go through the isolation, you go through the feelings, the emotions, all of it you feel. Yeah, it is
I just
rejection.
think, you were saying you have to own up, and I agree with that. We do have to own our sins, but he has to own his too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So does everybody involved in the abortion industry.
Right.
No one is exempt. Yeah. Everyone that participates in, the father, the baby, the parents, those working inside the abortion clinic. That's why, you know, Abby Johnson has her ministry for those people that have worked inside abortion clinics. Mm-hmm. They all need to own up to their own culpability. You know, I look at the abortion industry, you know, just the one we have in the Fargo-Moorhead area where women are going in there every week. I can tell you inside the abortion facility, most women, I would say the majority of women, don't receive any explanation of the medical procedure they're about to undergo. We're not given possible complications I might have in the future, which many women do, from the procedure, or just the trauma, the emotional trauma you have afterwards, the physical trauma you can have. The abortion industry is trained to have an answer for every concern a woman may have, leaving that woman feeling that abortion is good health care and it is your best choice. I mean, I've heard women say, well, in there asking questions, and she goes, well, I don't want to do this. I don't know if I do, but the father of the baby wants me to do this. The answer to that for them is, well, you don't want to lose the father. Of course you need to do that. Just this baby's going to cost you so much money if a woman it's answer after answer, convincing this woman. They are trained to have an answer for every question that we might have if we're questioning, why, just like I did. Why am I here? Why am I feeling this? Looking at the other woman. I want to be invisible. Those are signs I want to run. I'm not comfortable with what I'm doing. And yet we don't leave.
And the other thing about it is a baby is going to grow. A week from now, it's going to grow more, and a week from then. And so there's this urgency. Vulnerability coupled with urgency, it's a disaster.
It is. And many women will ask that question. Is my baby's heart beating yet? Is this? Is that? Will my baby feel pain? No. But you have to understand they are also trained not to tell us the truth. The abortion industry is a money-making industry. They are not there to provide good health care. They're not. They are there for money, in my mind. I mean, that is it. When you talk to every single woman that I have talked to or ministered to that talks about their abortion, this is the first thing they say. The first thing I had to do in that abortion clinic is lay down my money. What does that say? Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, it speaks a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once you're in there and you start going through the process, you do feel like you can't leave. It's from one room to the other, to the other, to the other, and now, and this is a whole nother topic we could discuss later, but women are now not even doing that. Now we can do chemical abortions, and you can have abortion, quote, in the comfort of your own home. This is absurd. Mm-hmm. This is tragic for women. This is not good health care for women. And this is on the increase. That's another reason why abortion is not good health care for women. You cannot do this alone at home. If any of these women, at least let me say this. When I had an abortion, I was in a facility. There was a doctor there. Although everything they were doing, I disagree with. But now, looking back, if I would have started having medical problems, surgical problems, say I'd have been bleeding out or whatever, and I have seen this where an ambulance pulls up to an abortion clinic, I could have gotten to the safety of a hospital. Women right now who are being lied to saying, you can have an abortion in the comfort of your own home. And I've heard stories like this of chemical abortions. You all need to hear them, your listening audience. They don't do that. They're at home. They don't want anyone to know. They're doing this in secret. They start having medical problems. I can tell you 100%, women are going to die. Women are going to be taken to hospitals by somebody that sees them laying on the floor. This is tragic. If you call this good health care for women, I don't know what bad health care is for women.
And there's that alone aspect again. Again, she's alone, and now even more alone in her home, thinking about her. Now she's faced, her baby's going to be dying inside of her. She is actually the abortionist in a way. We're going to pause here, Jody, because I want to hear as much as you want to share about actually the procedure and then, of course, the after effects and how you've moved through that. So we're just going to take a little pause, and we'll be back after this break to hear more from Jody Clemens.
Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
Welcome back to Matters of Soul Importance. I'm Roxanne Solonen, and talking with my friend Jody Clemens, who is a post-abortive woman who is a lot more things than that. But we're going to, that's what we're here today to talk about, is abortion healthcare. And before we answered that question, which is kind of getting answered as we go along here, we also wanted to talk about what is abortion. So Jody was just leading up to the point of sharing a little bit about the actual procedure and then what happened afterwards. So go ahead, Jody.
Well, my name was eventually called, and I was taken back to what they call the procedure room. And again, I'm a woman who recalls every sight, every sound, and every smell in that room. I most intensely remember, however, the moment during the procedure in which I turned my head to the side as tears just started flowing down my face, as the reality of what I was doing became abundantly clear. What I had worked so hard and tried so hard to deny, I could no longer deny. And I knew laying on that table, it's emotional, but my baby was dying or now dead. And I also knew this, that what I had done to my child, my baby, I could never undo. It didn't matter then, which I did. It didn't matter then, though, how much I regretted it, how hard I cried, how much I longed for my child. My decision for abortion, as it is with every woman who has an abortion, is irreversible. There's no going back on this decision. There are no redos available for a woman who has an abortion. That's not true with many decisions we make in life. There's times when we can make restitutions. We can go back and make a wrong right. Not with abortion. You don't get this. That's one of the dangers. And that is another reason why abortion is not good health care. You can't do this. And shame and guilt at that moment absolutely flooded every fiber of my being as a woman. But that's where I was. I couldn't do it over. So after the abortion is completed for every woman, I was taken to what they call the recovery room, as if you can recover from an abortion in 10 minutes in a recovery room with a glass of water, or orange juice, and a cracker. But in my recovery, where I was in the recovery room, there were many other women who had also just had an abortion. There was no talking. There was no smiling. There was no laughing. There was no eye contact in this room. The only thing in that room was a very eerie silence. Well, I was put into a recliner to recover. I felt numb at that point. I really did feel numb. And tears just continued to flow down my face. But Roxanne, far worse for me is what happened next. And this changed my life for years. As I sat in that recliner, I started recalling all or many of those scripture verses that I had memorized earlier in my church years. It was like an audible message, but it was only heard by me. And here is what I heard. You murdered, therefore you must die. Following that was a scripture. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a life for a life. Now remember what I just told you. I knew on the procedure table that my baby was now dying or dead. And what I had done, I could never undo. I knew what I had done. I knew I had just taken a life, and because of that, I now believed my life would be demanded of me. Then another verse would come as I sat in that recovery chair. You will reap what you sow. You murdered, therefore you must die. You see, I knew what I had sown, and I now believed I would reap the same. At that point where I was in that chair, in that recovery room, was my mind had become an open playground for Satan. And the father of lies, who had told me when I say he told me, there were thoughts that I had in my mind, like, it's legal, it must be right. Just all these lies to get me through the abortion clinic door. The father of lies now became the accuser, and accused he did. What you did, you will pay for. You will sow what you reaped. He is evil, and he's never satisfied with just the death of the child. He comes after that woman maliciously to destroy her also. And that is what we see with a lot of women who are suffering the aftermath of their abortion emotionally, physically, mentally. 50,000 women a year report having serious emotional and mental problems after an abortion. 50,000 a year may sound like a small number compared to the number of abortions a year, which is 1 million. But when you take 50,000 women a year, go back to Roe, 50 years. We're now 51 years in. That's like 2.53 million women who are living in society who are suffering the aftermath of their abortion. And as I said earlier, these women live among us, and you would never know it because we keep this, our deepest, darkest secret in our life. We don't tell. We don't tell. Satan gets us to that point. Or we personally do, thinking people are going to reject us, they're going to hate us, they'll never accept me if they know that I am that woman who's had an abortion. So secrecy is how we live our lives. This becomes something we don't share. For many women, it's the average amount of time a woman keeps an abortion a secret is 10 years. That is not good health care. I never kept it a secret that I had my tonsils out. Right. I never kept it a secret, whatever.
And you talk about the women and the effects on her. There's other, again, let's bring the father back into it. That's a silence also. And then whatever, maybe she has children and she's still affected. If it takes 10 years, that grief is still pouring out in some way.
Oh, it's dysfunctional behavior. I mean, I would say the majority of women who have this bundled up, and it's buried deep within their inmost being. It's off limits. We don't talk about it. We make a vow that no one will ever know about this. We're never going to talk about it. This is going to be my secret, my forever secret. That's how women talk who have had abortions. And in silency and in secrecy or isolated and alone, suffering internally, like you said. And we engage in self-destructive behavior. It's going to come out in many different self-destructive behaviors, whether it's drinking, whether it's drugs, whether it's cutting, whether it's just unhealthy relationships. Maybe a lot of women become promiscuous, just looking for love in all the wrong places. It's exactly right. It's there. And when it doesn't surface and we can't let it go, we can't talk about it, we can't grieve a normal way that most people leave when they lose someone in life. I mean, you think about it, someone passes away that you love, we grieve, we help each other out. That is not so with this woman who's had an abortion. No one knows. No one knows. We don't get to grieve. Not in a healthy way. We grieve in a very unhealthy way. We don't go through the stages of grief, although we do, but it's a non-healthy way, if you understand.
I'm going to ask a question that might be a little bit challenging, but when I first heard you and others speak about your abortion experience, I was very moved, so moved that I ended up becoming a sidewalk advocate to try to help women and men know that there are other options. And but there was a question I had because all of you had come from a Christian background, and I remember thinking, well, you had that background. What about people that don't have that background? And so I'm trying to anticipate. I'm thinking of people that maybe didn't grow up that way or who have pushed away their religion entirely. Hearing you bring up these Bible verses, they might say, well, see how you were lied to through your scripture. I'm just trying to anticipate what kind of responses might come, and how would you respond to that?
Right now, I have a very good friend who does share with me now. She had a chemical abortion, but her story is not like mine. She grew up in a very dysfunctional home, a lot of abuse. In fact, I think when she was 16, she was out on the streets, became pregnant. Many times it's the same reasons that I'm saying, I just need to fix this problem. I need to get rid of this. She underwent a chemical abortion. And you know what, Roxanne? and listening audience, she suffered. She suffered for years, and years and years and years, until she found hope and healing. And that was through a post-abortion healing retreat. She knew she needed help, is my point. You don't have to be a Christian to feel these feelings. Women instinctively, it's abnormal for us to kill our children, whether you're a Christian, a non-Christian, it doesn't matter. I can talk to a non-Christian right now and say, do you love your children? Well, of course I do. We love our children. That is how we are I want to say again how God made us, but let's put that aside then. We love our children. We love our children. At least that's how we should be.
Right.
Men protect. I mean, we have these roles. That's how men and women, So no, women who are not raised in a church, although 75% of women, or I think it's 70% of women who walk into an abortion clinic claim that they were Christians at the time of their abortion. Now, I don't know. Maybe I don't remember getting a form like that, but if I did, you know what? I'd have put Christian because I'd been in a church, but I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't living a life that reflected that in any way. In fact, I walked away from all of that before I had my abortion. But I understand your question. There's women who never set foot in a church. There's women who never had the opportunity. They still suffer after an abortion.
Another thought I had was when you were saying you kept it secret, and then there's this new thing, or has been, a couple years ago, to shout your abortion. And it's like, okay, well, they're not keeping it secret. But again, you come to like the maternal aspect of it and who we are as women, just who we are at our essence. That's a lie, and we know it. We know you don't shout about killing your own child happily.
I think many women, not many, I want to take that word back. There are women after an abortion who do want to rationalize, if you will, their abortion. So they will get overly involved in being an escort outside an abortion clinic. They will shout my abortion because if I don't do that, Roxanne, then I have to be responsible for what I did. I have to know my own culpability. I have to say that was a life. But if I can't do that, and that's probably part of the protectiveness of this heart, what am I going to say, that I did this? So no, I'm going to go way over here. And I know that happens. I've heard the testimony of a woman who worked inside an abortion clinic who did that to justify, to rationalize.
Because there is grief. Whether you recognize it or however it manifests, the grief will come out.
It does. Exactly true.
Because it's
a loss.
It is a human life. And I think that's the other question about which you've been revealing. It isn't an elephant. It isn't, if it's a clump of cells, it's a clump of human cells that are a stage in the human's development, just like a toddler is, or a preschooler, or an adolescent. We as humans go through different stages. We can't come out fully an adult, but we're fully human.
We are absolutely fully human. And also, Roxanne, with all the advancements we have in medical technology, we see this life in the womb. We know that heart is beating way before many women have an abortion. We know it's got a beating heart. Human embryology, just go. It's like, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is in those first months. And we see it and we know it. That is what we have to shut off to have an abortion. We got to deny that. We got to shut down. We got to say, this is, we're going to go take care of our problem. I have a problem that needs to be fixed. It's not, I'm going to go kill my baby. We don't say that, even though every abortion, and I'll be clear when I say this, but careful when I say that, because I am a woman who said an abortion. It is the intentional murder of another human being. And that sounds harsh, but it is. What else is it? We're not removing tissue. It's not a clump of cells. It is a human being. And if that baby was outside the womb, say my baby would have been outside the womb, and I would have intentionally killed that baby, I would be in jail, which I should be, I think that's sometimes how women feel after an abortion. It was the intentional taking of a human life. I am guilty, therefore I should be punished. But when the law doesn't require that, we start punishing ourselves. Our self-destructive behavior kicks in. That is not how it should be. Abortion should be outlawed.
Is abortion healthcare? When my father died, the medical staff confirmed his death by checking to see if he had a heartbeat. His life had ended prior to that point, but it was made definitive by the medical action. Though science has revealed that life begins even before the human heart starts beating, we can be confident that a beating heart that sets blood pumping through a body is a sure sign that there is human life there. Abortion ends a unique and unrepeatable human life through the actions of another human or humans who just happen to have more power. To say that that is healthcare is not only a very long stretch, it is an outright lie. Though I've laid that out plainly and simply, circumstances surrounding abortion are seldom simple. That's one of the reasons we've decided to make this a two-part interview. So next week, we're going to share the second half of my conversation with Jody. If you know someone who is considering abortion, if you've had an abortion yourself, or if you know someone who has, you'll want to come back to hear the rest of Jody's story and learn how she was freed from the chains that had kept her bound for more than a decade. I hope you'll come back. Until then, don't lose sight of the light.